Hi there, welcome to another week of a grid design every week. This week, sorry it's nighttime, but I happen to be working on a sample right now in which I'm going to use this stitch, so I thought might as well get our tutorial in while I'm actually using this design on one of my quilts. It's the checkerboard design, and I find that it's a really neat design and it's very easy. So come over, I'll show you some samples of where I've used it and where I'm going to use it tonight. Alright, let me pull over these samples. Okay, so this is a little sample, class sample I just finished. The binding's not stitched down, but it's my gorgeous gridded quilting designs class. I'm going to be teaching it at Road to California next week. So I wanted to make a new sample for the class with all the stitches they're going to learn. But this is the checkerboard, and you can see we quilt every other square, and the ones that aren't quilted puff up and give you that beautiful checkerboard effect. So it looks beautiful as a background. And then here, I think it looks really nice. Hopefully you can see that. It looks great in sashings and borders. If you have solid colored sashing or borders, sometimes we don't know what to do in there. And this is just a real simple design that looks nice. And it's kind of masculine too. So sometimes we make quilts for guys and we don't know how to quilt them. And so this is a good option for some of those things. Let me show you another one. Here's another class sample from one of my trapunto classes. So I've done this checkerboard design behind the sunflower, and it just looks really pretty. You can just see that dimension. So I'm going to show you now how easy it is to do. And we're working on another class sample. I've got tons of them. I'm always sending them out to different guilds and whatnot, so I find out that I need more than I have on hand. Alright, so here's my trapunto, and I've been doing some different background filler stitches. Some of them are grid based. Can you see those, Cam? Some are grid based and some are just fun filler stitches. But down in this area I'm going to do the checkerboard. And what I want to warn you about or fill you in on is with the checkerboard you want to use thread that's very close to your background. For this I've got white quilters or Kaufman sateen, ultra sateen fabric, and a real lavender thread. So that's going to be okay. It's going to show our dimension, but if I was using darker purple or something, all you really see is the thread and not the design. So stick with closely matching thread for this. Alright, so the way we're going to do this, let me get a pen out. The way you do checkerboard is 2 columns at a time. So we're going to work in this square and this square and this square and this square. So we're going to fill up 2 columns at a time. And this design is in my book. Another thing I want to say is I'm not going to stitch these grid lines because it's really not necessary, but I will say if this was a show quilt I would stitch those grid lines because it really gives you more definition for your checkerboard if you stitch the grid lines. But for something simple like this, we don't need to do that. Alright. Alright, so you want to start filling in a square, and you want to go all the way to the blue line, to your blue grid line. You want to fill that up all the way. Let me see. We're going to fill these squares pretty full. Now when we get down here, we're going to travel over to that next column. I call it a row for simplicity's sake, but it's really one of our columns. And you can see I'm filling up those blocks pretty snug. that's going to make those empty squares really pop a lot better. Can you see okay, Cameron? So if you were doing this in a sashing or border, you need to make sure whatever your grid size is, that your sashing or border is divisible by that size. So if you've got a 1-inch border, you would use you know, a grid like this, a 1/2 inch horizontal, vertical, and then you can get 2 checkerboard rows in there. And so anything like 1.5 would work, but if you had a 1 1/4 inch border sashing, then this 1.5 inch, this 1/2 inch grid wouldn't work. So it has to be divisible by the size of your grid. So if you have a 1.5 inch sashing, you could actually use a 3/4 inch grid. Okay, so now we're at the bottom. Sorry, I'm trying to think and sew at the same time. We're going to travel over 2 and then work our way back up the other way. And you can see when I get to this line, I'm not leaving any space. Sometimes it's like, oh, I should just scooch over. There's not really enough room to do another little filler line that I'm doing, but you want these boxes to be full. And we go back to, and so you can see how those alternate empty squares, that negative space, is puffing up beautifully. And because I'm using this lavender thread, we are seeing the thread a little bit. It's showing. If I was using white, all you would really see is that checkerboard design, which is very beautiful. And I'll show you that again when we're done on that other sunflower quilt. But it still looks really nice because this lavender silk is so pale. It's working well. So this is a great stitch, very easy and very quick. Now we've got kind of a funny area here, so I'm going to go up. I need to think about what I'm going to do. So that's going to be, yeah. I need to, oh boy, sometimes I have to think about what I'm doing. Go up here. So that's empty. That's going to have quilting. That one's not. So I need to just stitch here, just like this. Whenever you have odd shapes in an area, sometimes it requires a little thought. It's like down here, things are easy to figure out. Can you see that? You know, it's obvious. But when you get up to little filler spaces, sometimes you have to think about it. Alright. I'm going to just go ahead and finish this row. So you can see I'm going all the way to my blue grid lines. I really want to fill up those boxes perfectly. And you can just imagine, if I did quilt the grid lines first, you're really going to have a nice sharp checkerboard effect. This is kind of the easy way of doing it. Like I said, if I had a show quilt, I would quilt the grid lines. Done. And I'm not going to finish this right now. You guys get the gist of how it's done. Let me pull that out. We'll take a look at that. So there's that. Of course, our marked grids are going to be distracting, but let me turn it over. And now you can see how beautiful that looks. And hopefully you can see the dimension and everything. So that's our checkerboard stitch. Very easy, fun, and has lots of real life applications on your quilts. And let me show you, show you again. Sorry about that. On this, when I use the same color of thread, all you really see is the puffy squares, the checkerboard. So that's it, checkerboard. All right, hope you enjoyed that one. Again, remember, like that stitch as well as many others are in my book, the Grid Design Workbook. And this has shows you how things look on patchwork as well as on solid fabric. Step-by-step written directions, practice pages in the back, so you have everything there, you know, if you don't get it all from the tutorial on YouTube. So I hope you'll check that out on my website, quintessentialquilting.com. And then, I know I've mentioned this before, but this is a DVD I had produced. It's 30 tips and tricks for better machine quilting. And these are just things that I've learned over my 25 years of quilting on a domestic sewing machine. Things that make quilting easier for us domestic machine quilters. So hope you'll check that out. If you ever struggle with things like tension or handling large quilts or what needle to use or what backing to use, I cover a lot of information in here. So hope you'll check that out. That's also available on my website, quintessentialquilting.com. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week for another grid-based quilting design.